This review, we are looking at another one of those really cool IFL customized watches. We've done 2 previous ones. We did that beautiful Citizen that had the Space Surfer cartoon on the dial, and then we had a previous G-Shock which had an ocean scene. This new version that IFL very kindly sent me in, this is piece in homage to vintage Aviation, and in this particular case, this one is their Spitfire version. There's also going to be one with a supersonic plane on it. A limited edition of 100 pieces in the Spitfire. A really impressive artwork that has been painted onto what is quite a utilitarian G-Shock. Before we dive in and look at this amazing dial, let's talk about the G-Shock that they've used. My best guess, and I'm pretty certain of this, they've used the GM 2100 CB-3A. This is one of the newer G-Shock CasiOaks 2100s, but this one has a strap added to it. So it has strap adapters, and then a normal watch strap has been added. In this case, a 20mm strap, a nylon strap that has NATO strap, metal keepers, and a metal tang there, buckle. This is very comfortable strap. Obviously, with the strap adapters, it does sit slightly wider from lug to lug, and in this case, that lug to lug measurement is going to be 49.3, and we have a 44.4 across. But this is one of the most wearable G-Shocks, I would say, for smaller wrists, with exception of the square, because it's only 11.8mm thick. Because they've used a standard strap, that means it falls very close to the wrist. Very comfortable G-Shock to wear. This standard G-Shock retails for $230, whereas this IFL watch, where they've added that additional artwork to the dial, this one's going to be about €1,190, probably similar price in US dollars. These sell out very fast. I believe the Space Surfer that I did and the Ocean ones, they sold out within 24 hours, I think. So expect these to go very fast. If you are watching this after the Monday release, still stick with it, because I think you'll still find it very interesting when we get a close-up on that really cool dial to see some of the artistry there. So if you're a G-Shock fan, I'd still stick around. Speaking of a G-Shock, let's just talk about the module that they've used here. So they have used the CasiOak version, but it's doesn't have one of the advanced modules in it. So we don't have atomic timekeeping, we don't have Bluetooth, we don't have solar, of course, because they would have painted over the solar panel with the artwork that they've added on here. The no frills one, I'd say, battery powered, so expect it to last for 3 years. You have things like world time on here, countdown timer, 1/100-second stopwatch, the 5 daily alarms. All of that additional detail is displayed on the smaller display at the bottom. This one is a little bit difficult to see. It's a negative display, but the backing of the negative display is also done in a darker silver, or like a greeny silver, so I find it quite hard to see in most lights. It does have a bright LED that does illuminate this additional display. But one thing that does separate this from the Ocean Scene one, which one of my big complaints with that was that as a watch, it was quite hard to see. There wasn't a lot of contrast between the hands. The design itself was quite dark along with the bezel. This one is the complete opposite. Highly visible hands. There's lume on the hour and the minute hand, but of course they can also be illuminated by the LED. But these are white with a white lume on them, and also IFL have added white or whiter paint to the indices as well. I think the original watches indices were a dark grey, where they have added white to this, and it really increases that contrast and that visibility in low light. In fact, the only 2 items that they've kept from the original watch is the day selector and also the day display. On other 2100 series watches, this arrow is used as a mode selector, but on these modules it's used to point at the day. So enough about the G-Shock itself, let's concentrate on that dial. So again, there's been many hours spent on customizing this watch. They've gone with a vintage aviation theme, and this one, I would argue the Spitfire on here is more of a truthful representation of what a Spitfire looks like, whereas the previous Space Surfer watch that we looked at, and you could argue the Ocean Scene as well, cartoon versions, whereas this is more of a perhaps a technical representation of what a Spitfire looks like, but still has a lot of vivid colors. The Spitfire is in mid-flight. We can see some of the additional paint paint marks to indicate that the propeller is moving on the front. When I was growing up, I had a grandfather that fought in World War II, so I was a big history buff. And of course, being British, the Spitfire was so iconic, part of the Allied forces during World War II, and you could still see them. You can still see them in a museum in Manchester where I grew up. There was some that used to fly, privately owned ones, but I don't think they fly at air shows anymore. Although I remember as a kid certainly seeing them in flight. Just an iconic plane, and I think they've really done it justice on this dial. You can see on these macro shots just what a skilled artist has painted this. They use acrylic paints to paint these. And if you're wondering, does it void the G-Shock's warranty because they open it and paint it on the dial? IFL themselves in the box put their own warranty in there as well, so if you did have a problem you would send it back to them. You are covered by their warranty if anything does go wrong with this. But going back to the painting on the dial, at the halfway point between the 3 and the 9, we can see the tree line. We can see the separation between how the Spitfire is flying in the sky and then the tree line. This is my only thing that I preferred the ocean scene over this one, is that the ocean scene had a lot of Easter eggs in it. There was a shipwreck, whereas this is a more minimalist design. I think the tree line, perhaps there could have been some houses, maybe a downed enemy plane. To add a few more elements to it, that bottom half seems a little bit more plainer in contrast to the ocean scene. One thing I am really impressed with as well with these watches is not just the artistry, but the fact that they've incorporated the rehort, that the tree line transitions to the rehort as well as the sky in the top. They've also infilled the paint on the bezel to match those indices that they painted. I continue to be very impressed with the customization work. Not for everyone. I know a few in the comments don't like them playing around with G-Shocks and stuff like that. You're not a big fan of painting on dial, but I think it's really cool. And it means that even though this G-Shock, there's probably hundreds of them out there because it is such a popular model, you could be one of only 100 people that owned this. And of course, because they're all hand painted, each one's going to be slightly different. And once IFL do a limited edition, they do it and then they move on to something else. So if you are interested in this watch, I would jump on it pretty quick. Use the link in the description down below. I've got a special link for channel members. So if you click on that link, and they'll know that you've come directly from my video, so I'd really appreciate it. But more importantly, as with all of these, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Really interested to know what you think of this one, as well as some of the other IFL watches. They sent me this in for review, so a big thanks to them. If you like this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Making content like this weekly. I really appreciate you watching this. I'll see you next time on Casual Watch Reviews.